I'm the guy that got it wrong, apparently. But I come here today to talk to you about a product called Alto. And in particular, I want to talk a little bit about being a zealot. So I work at AOL. Yes, we are still in business. And I began the journey into zealotry actually at this conference, a long time ago when I heard a very inspiring talk about this man, the one on the right, not the other guy's Obi-Wan Kenobi. The guy on the right, George Lucas. And it was a talk given by Steven Anderson, and it was called The Force Behind Star Wars. And it was all about turning your design ideas into reality. Anyone heard this talk? Hands up if you have. Fantastic talk, obviously you have. But it was really how George Lucas took this kind of redonkulous idea about space and princesses and robots and these big giant hairy ape things called Wookiees, and he made it real. And he was writing a story about rebels fighting an empire, but he was living that story too. He was a rebel fighting the movie studios and the sheer force of gravity that was trying to keep his ideas on the ground. So George really he was a rebel, he was a zealot. And I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so I, of course, was completely taken with the talk and thought, hey, why don't I try this? That'll be great. And so I tried to do it with a little product called Alto inside a very large company called AOL. And this is that story. So this is really how Alto came to be inside of a 25-year-old internet company. That's pretty old. And it's totally not perfect. It's far from perfect. We got tons of shit wrong, and it is not even close to the model process. In fact, you guys have probably heard all of these techniques before. I mean, there's not going to be anything I think that's too shocking. But what I'm really interested in sharing with you guys today is about the contagion of ideas and creating an environment for contagious ideas and converting others in the company to the cause. And how do you find zealous users, actually? And to me, that's what being a zealot is all about. Because it's often that final bit of rocket fuel that gets your ideas into orbit. That's the last mile, and that's the hardest mile. So this is that story, and this is actually a story about email. How many of you have heard about email? You raise your hand if you've heard about me. Okay, so a few of you. All right. Okay, great. So I have a question for you guys. How many of you guys actually love the email product that you use to check your mail? Please raise your hand if you love it. Okay, a few. Can you just shout out what you're using? Gmail. Okay, anything else? Outlook. Okay, all right. Okay, great. This is good. So, but as you see, not many people are raising their hands, right? Well, this is the first thing about zealots. They come from desperate times. And really, this is about evolution and revolution, right? So evolution is safe and it's slow, but revolution is fast and it's rapid and it's dangerous. And when you talk about evolutionary design, that's all about keeping the trains running and making sure that the features are right. But revolutionary design is about overturning outdated patterns. And email is one of those for us. And in particular at AOL, we are in a turnaround, and times are pretty desperate because we're in last place, right? We're in AOL Mail is like the 4th horse in a 3-horse race. So it's not good. It's desperate, right? Bad times. We have nothing to lose, though, by disrupting ourselves. And we have no choice. And Alto is actually here today because of that. So they are directly linked. It's really important. Market leaders have to protect what they have, but underdogs use guerrilla tactics, and they take risks. And that is really one of the key stories of Alto. So one of the things about zealots is they know their history, right? So they have to know where they've come from. They have to know their heritage. And we needed to do this when we tackled this product. We had to look back on email, and we had to frame the problem, and we had to figure out, like, what the heck happened? How did we get to this mess of, if you've used an inbox, why don't people love their email products? They use it every day. So I'm going to take you on a little journey through email history. And it ironically all started here with AOL. right? You've got mail. They made a movie about it, right? It's a big deal, right? It used to mean something. It used to mean that we introduced email to the masses, and when Aunt Lou sent you an email, that was a big deal, right? That was exciting. Someone was reaching out to you. It was new, it was cool, it was fun, right? So then you sort of fast forward, and these guys come on the scene. What did they do? Well, they made email free, right, for one thing. You start to see spam emerge in like some really large quantities. You start to see email from businesses, not just people. And the sheer volume of email really starts to rise. And then these guys come on, and I would say there's probably one of the last big revolutions in email, arguably. And they introduce things like threading and labels. But most importantly, they introduce bottomless storage, unlimited supply of storage. And so now all that email can just stack right up. And isn't that great? I think that's fantastic, right? So fantastic, right? Now, so these guys are new on the scene, right? This is what most teens, college students, there's obviously some debate about them flocking away from Facebook, but this is what they use for a lot of their inboxes. And they do something where they emphasize unified messaging, right? They don't distinguish between SMS, email, and communication. So now we sort of see the history, like where do we sit? Where are we in this lineage, right? So let's talk about another thing that zealots need, which is a cause, right? The struggle, the cause. It's what defines the zealot. It's what is infused into their core. They eat it, they drink it, they sleep it, they breathe it. We knew our history now, right? So now we needed to figure out, well, what's our cause with this product? By the way, I am going to show you the product, so just in case you're wondering. So we had to really, to figure out the cause, we really had to look at, okay, so now where are we today? Today's world, what do we have? Well, there's a lot of talk about how email's dead, and honestly, it's really link bait headlines. I mean, this stat shows about how vibrant email still is, right? Tons of people still use it. 3/4 of email users have more than 2 accounts. I'm sure you guys probably have a ton more. And mobile access is obviously growing, 3% growth in the category. It's not going anywhere. So it's one of the 3 things that people do in the morning. First, they go to the bathroom, then they check their mail, and then they check Facebook. So it's not at an end, it's at a beginning, right? And you've got mail, in particular, used to be something positive, right? But it's changed. Now it's really changed. That sucks, actually. Because before, it was person to person, and now a lot of that stuff has moved to Facebook and to texting, to other mediums. And so what's left, right? Well, what's left is you don't get your e-bills via Facebook messages, and you don't get your 401k statements over text, right? So what's left is this. This is what's left in today's inboxes. The email is about life management, right? So it's transactional. But the problem is we don't have very good tools to organize this. And this is really one of the problems that Alto is trying to solve, to try to tame the deluge of this unending stream, right? This became our cause. This became something that everybody could believe in and everybody felt very passionate about. And we were basically about fighting inbox fatigue. So, another thing that zealots do. Zealots have to turn their weaknesses into strength because typically the zealot is the underdog, right? The zealot is usually the weaker party, sort of against a more powerful foe. And the more powerful foe in this case is like Paul Graham's list of top 10 things that startups should focus on that are huge problems. Email is like one of them, right? That's a big deal. It's a huge thing to try to tackle. So if zealots have to fight asymmetrically, right, they have to, you have to sort of look at all of the different brands where we have to look at all the different brands that we had from email, from AOL to Gmail, et cetera, and we had to go back and look at that and figure out, gee, our biggest weakness is our own brand. That's kind of a problem, right? No one's going to switch to an AOL address. There's NPR articles about how you should not use that if you want a job, because that's bad, right? Very bad. So, so your address actually, it matters, right? Because what's happening is you're attaching your personal brand to ours. And so let's just go through a quick little exercise here. So what do you think of when you see an email from a person with this address? You just shout it out. What do you think of? Private account. private. Okay, that's interesting. Anything else? Person? Oh, personal. Okay. Okay. How about this one? 97. Old. Okay. How about this one? Okay, how about this? Now, these guys changed recently. What about this? Any different? Sort of. Okay. How about this? Huh? Grandma. There you go. That's right. Internet on training wheels. Grandma. Yes. Believe me, I've heard it at so many cocktail parties. It's not even fun. So the thing about Alto is that Alto, you don't need another address, actually. And this was a big sea change internally. That was a big deal because a lot of people at AOL were like, what? We're not going to have an AOL account? What will we do? The earth will stop spinning. And it actually turns out that when you go out and talk to people, no one needs another email address. The last thing they need is another email address, right? So it's just an uphill battle. So we did some judo on that, and we turned that weakness into a strength. And I'll show you how that works in a second. So another thing that Zealots do, Zealots have to convert others to their cause. That's both internally and also externally with customers. So we talked about the addresses of email, but I want to talk a little bit about on the inside of email, because on the inside, it turns out that we did a study where we went to a lot of different people who use Gmail, Yahoo, all those guys. We asked them to grade their own service. Like, what do they, scale A to F, what do you guys give your service? Turns out that most people get a C, right? It's pretty average. And for a lot of normal people, not people in the Silicon Valley or high-tech areas, but a lot of normal people, not that you're not normal, email experiences on the inside are like this. It's a commodity, right? It's like the gas and the electric. It's not that exciting. And if you really back up and look at email products at the macro level, I mean, really back up. There's a lot of details in there, but if you really go back, they're all pretty much the same. You got a folder list, you got a list of messages, and you read and you write. It's pretty much the same stuff, right? So like when I ask my wife, who loves when I do this, by the way, what do you like about your email? She's like, come on, dude, I do not care. It's my email. That's all I needed to do, just work. That's it, right? So for most people, email is good enough. And that's a problem because how do we convince people to use a new product when things are like just kind of okay and fine, right? Turns out there's another industry that had a very similar problem. These guys, vacuum cleaners, right? Up until about 2002, the industry had a lot of C players, just like email does. And people bought new vacuum cleaners when their old ones broke. That's why you'd go and buy a new one, right? And vacuum cleaners were sold at these really tiny margins, and they were razor thin. They made money on vacuum bags, actually. And most consumers were like, hey, this is great, it's fine. I don't even know I have a problem. Until this guy comes onto the scene. Right? This is a Dyson, in case you didn't know. And he said, hey, there's a big giant problem out there, it's called suction. You don't trap, like if you trap dirt against vacuum bags, that's really inferior to actually sucking the dirt out of the air. And so he created this whole line of products based around that concept. He convinced the world that they had a suction problem. So we kind of have a similar challenge because we had to convince the world that you've got an inbox problem. And actually, the problem is you've really got an organization problem. That's your key problem with email, right? So another thing about Zealots is they believe, and they believe strongly. And as I go through, I'm going to show you guys the product, and I'm going to come back to this because this is the key thing that keeps you alive in a lot of really dire situations. We believe that organization is beautiful, and really that's the key line behind Alto. It's all about organization. Really the best way to understand Alto is to see it. So I'm going to show you that. If we could switch over to, I'm going to do my Julia Child moment and pull a fully baked Alto out of the oven. There it is. Okay, so Alto is a pretty deep product, but I am going to just show you the key part of it because I just want to focus on one piece. And that is called stacks. So as you can see here, just to kind of orient you, left side, you've got your different accounts. You can add up to 5 accounts to Alto. They live in here. And you can do contacts, calendar, et cetera. Your list of messages here. And then you've got these things. So what Alto does is it actually crawls your account, and it goes and it sucks out all of the stuff, kind of like Dyson's vacuums, right? Like it's just sucking it out. Like, and what it does is it creates these things called stacks. And so the first kind of stack that we create is this, called a photo stack. So it goes through and it pulls out all the assets. It doesn't care about the messages, it cares about the assets, because a lot of times email is used as a transportation vehicle for assets. The message doesn't matter, right? So we do the same thing with attachments. Little previews, you can go in there. You can even go into gallery mode in, let's see, in Photos. Missed this one. You can go through here, you can cruise through them. It's pretty fast, right? So we're sort of turning traditional inboxes on their head by really focusing on the assets, not the messages. So it also does it with daily deals. So it can actually go through and look at different senders and group them into these tile views. And that provides you the ability to suck those out of your inbox. So when you first come in here, what that does is say, hey, do you want to skip your inbox? And if you say yes, it's going to suck all those daily deals out and put them into that stack. It does the same thing with retailers. And it presents it in a different kind of view, because in a lot of cases with retailers, you don't have to reply to forward all, you don't need all those commands. So we just cut out a lot of that stuff and just show you the actual HTML of the email. And you can cruise through it and do window shopping, right? And we also do things around social notifications. So it sort of looks at the different senders, it graphs them for you, and it shows you some basic analytics. So I'm just going to show you one more quick thing, and then we'll go back, because I want to show you how you make a stack. And to make a stack, I can basically go like this. I just take it and I drag it, and it's going to create a stack for all messages from Living Social. Yes. I want to skip it. Fantastic. There it goes. It sucks it out. Boom. So those guys are now removed from my inbox and put into this stack. Okay, so I want to show you one more thing. I'm going to switch over to my fully mined account. This is my actual account, so don't send me an email right now. That would be very bad. But the basic gist I want to show you here is this. This, after, what we get to is about a point where we notice where stacks sort of plateau, and you get to a point where you're in a pretty good equilibrium. The left side is my messages, the right side are stacks. This is what that same data is on Gmail, right? That's the same data, it's exactly the same. Alto's running off of the same back end. We don't do anything. That's kind of a mess. Like, I can't find anything. So if I go back to Alto, Dirk Cleveland is the guy who I know, actually. His message is way down here. In fact, I can't even find it. There it is, right there. So that sort of shows you some of the mechanics, some of the design behind what we did and what we tried to do. So if we could actually go back to the other slide, or the original deck. All right. Now, so that's just a snapshot of Alto. But let me tell you how we got here, because it wasn't pretty. So one of the things that Zealots are really good at is they adjust their tactics constantly, right? And boy, did we. We failed. We failed a lot. We're actually on the 7th generation of solving that problem. So that is that's the 7th iteration of us like cooking up ideas, some at various stages of completion, and it spanned about 4 calendar years. Right? So this is a long struggle deep in the trenches. And there's a parade of previous versions. This is one box, and they each had a unique angle. So this was a social one. Some were contact focused. Some were inbox barnacles that sat on top of your Gmail account. Some were standalone products. But as each new concept emerges, you start to see the good ideas and the genetics sort of passed on to the next generation of the ideas. And we're constantly adjusting our tactics behind the scenes, right? And you can start to see the bones of Alto, especially here, emerging. And along the way, we're borrowing from findings from other research and other communication products and applying them to ours. Some died because of the organizational climate, because the company at the time just wasn't ready for a new kind of product. Like, you're talking about AOL who invented email. The last thing I want to do when I come in and say, like, we're going to hide folders, they're like, what? What are you doing? That sounds dangerous. And this is one in particular that I want to focus on, because I think it talks a lot about where we started and how we got to Alto. This is Alto's predecessor. It's called Phoenix. This was designed to stem the tide of attrition from AOL Mail, from people leaving AOL Mail and going to other products. And it's really a life raft for existing AOL Mail users to get something kind of different and modern, right? This required a new email address, unlike Alto. And it leaned into composition. You can see at the top there is this thing called the quick bar. The funny thing is that 9 out of 10 emails are read, not composed. Whoops, that's a bad one. Aggregation was in here, but it was just sort of loosely based on the side. And what happened is we aggregated all your accounts, but we didn't give you any tools to manage that huge fire hose we just turned on. So everyone was like, horrible, turn it off, oh my God. And the biggest problem with Phoenix was that overall, this is rear view mirror thinking. This is looking back at the past, right? It looks too much like traditional mail. It's like mail now with more stuff, right? And we went out and we talked to people and we're like, what do you think about this? Well, it's not very innovative. It's not innovative enough for me to switch. And wow, when non-techie people tell you that your product isn't innovative enough to switch, these are like housewives, college students, insurance people, normal people, they tell you your product doesn't go far enough, you've got a big problem. And so what did we do, right? Well, the problem was that we had built on some incorrect assumptions. And one of those problems actually comes from the way that we looked at users for Phoenix. We looked at, this happens a lot actually in the tech sector. We striated along technical savviness, like novice users versus expert users. And that really doesn't get you anywhere. We really needed to be looking at behaviors. And the only way to see behaviors is to really go out and watch people in the real world, right? So we went out and we did a lot of testing, and we looked at people and went into their homes and talked to them where the dog was barking, the baby's crying, and we saw them actually using their email products in their actual environments. And the whole team went, not just the designers, but the QA team, the dev team, the VP of engineering, everybody went. And we saw 7 key things, right? Well, the first one is that email is pretty friggin' depressing. And that's an important piece. The emotional piece of that is really important because that weighs on everything that you put in front of somebody. It's no longer about personal communication, it's a deluge and it's overwhelming. The second thing is actually pretty interesting, is that there's so much junk in these products that people are asking for features that already exist, right? They're like, hey, filters, that'd be cool if we had those. I mean, these are actual user quotes. Hey, couldn't I have something that, when I'm on vacation that can sort of let people know that I'm away? Or how about a box that you can like type a term in and it gives you back messages that match that term? And those are real. That's real stuff, right? So that's kind of says something that like there's so much junk in these products that like people are getting lost. They're not seeing the actual features that are baked into there. They're just totally gone, right? So another thing that we saw, and I'm sure you guys are experiencing this too, is people's inboxes are just these endless lists of emails, right? And they're overwhelmed by the volume of mail. Some don't even know that they're overwhelmed. This is like the new normal, right? And that ties to this, which we also saw, which is most people just don't manage their inbox. The folders that we used to use, those are aspirational now. They are like gym memberships. You're still paying for them, but you don't actually go, right? Like that is what folders have become. And you pay a fee in terms of pixel space. And Alto really says, screw it, those are gone. They're in there, but they're sort of buried underneath. And because the problem is when you have a folder, stuff is out of sight and out of mind, right? So it's like poor information radiators. And organizing really isn't something I want to spend a lot of time doing, or I'll try once and I'll fail. And actually, that's a pretty common pattern we saw, is everyone's like, I'm going to totally manage my inbox this Christmas. Okay, I'm going to get 2 weeks off. Here's what I'm going to do. All right, we saw this a lot, right? I'm going to create a filter. Okay, how do I do that? Okay, you guys might know this, but out in the real world, this is tough to do, okay? Okay, I'm going to go to help. I set my filter up, and then one day I miss a message because the filter's not quite set up right. Okay, well, that's that. I can't do that. I'm delete that filter. And now my inbox grows, and now I just pan and scan, that's it. So these people have just given up. This is a massive problem with all inboxes out there that has yet to be solved. And so a lot of people are just saying, if I make a filter, it goes into a folder, it's out of sight, out of mind, I don't know about it. Dangerous stuff. So it's a pretty common story. Another thing we saw, people actually scroll to find messages before they search, right? So if you say hey, go find that message from John. Okay, hold on. Scroll. Maybe if you don't find it, then you search. But that's pretty interesting because that made us think well, wow, maybe we should build a more browsable email product, not something that's search where you have to figure out a term. That's hard for a lot of people to figure out is what's the term I search on, right? Last but not least, oh, sorry, not quite last. People rely on a lot of workarounds. You guys probably have seen these, right? So we actually found in talking to people that these are really important hierarchies. When you mark something unread, that means something. It means maximum visibility. This is super important. I'm going to mark this unread even though I've read it because I got to get back to it. I'm going to star something because I got to come back to it for later. Labels are often used around prioritization using color. So obviously a Gmail only kind of thing. And folders are really for future reference after a critical mass has been achieved. That's where you sort of create a little box for it. But the most important thing that we saw was this, is that people are more likely to be keepers than deleters. And this is really very much against the industry of email because right now the industry is very much focused on inbox zero. It's a Shangri-La of nirvana and achieving Zen with your inbox. And there's a ton of startups focusing on this, right? And if you look up Inbox Zero on Twitter, you're going to find a lot of people like these Tony Robbins-style personalities that are proclaiming ways you can change habits to deal with your inbox. So you can change yourself to deal with your inbox. That sucks, right? That's totally lame. It's like a bunch of fad diets, right? And so Alto really runs counter to a lot of products in the industry in that respect. It doesn't attempt to get you to Inbox Zero. It actually attempts to categorize stuff and organize. Okay, so we knew what we didn't want to build, and we had all these stories, right, that we had all shared together because we all went out in the field together. So we had to now figure out what it should be, and that takes inspiration. And Zealots have to be inspired. So I'm going to tell you the story about stacks, not snacks, stacks. They were actually inspired by snail mail, right? So we needed something that the app could galvanize around. We needed the central character of this. We needed the lead character of the movie, so to speak, right? And more specifically, we were inspired by snail mail, but more specifically, my wife. So I actually often watch her use her email product, which she hates, as I've said. One day she was sort of working with her Nordstrom email that was coming in. It comes in every week, and I was watching her, and she'd take it, delete it. The next day, I watched her, does the same thing, same product, or same email. This day after that, she just keeps deleting. I'm like, why do you make a filter? Well, it's hard, and if I send it to a folder, then I wouldn't see it. Okay, so that's interesting. That's a great point. And really, this is something I think that was important for all of us to remember in our team, was that we often talk about unmet needs, and there really are very few things that are unmet. We actually we should be talking about poorly met needs. And this really was one of those poorly met needs that the team really galvanized around and locked onto. Because when I actually watched her handling physical mail, something like this showed up, which is a pretty common pattern, turns out. So this is our mail bin in our house. We have a little slot in our garage door. The mail comes in, it goes into this giant bin. And she grabs the mail from this pile, and she'll open it. She'll open up any sort of personal or important stuff first, right? And then she does something that most email clients don't let you do. She makes stacks. She makes stacks for catalogs. She makes stacks for bills. She makes stacks for coupons. And they have a lifespan, actually, throughout the house, which is very interesting, right? The bills go on the desk for me to deal with, right? That's fantastic. The catalogs actually go near the bedside table or near the television so that she can read them when she has time, right? The coupons go on the fridge to remind her when she is going to the store, don't forget me. These stacks are radiating information constantly. That doesn't exist. There's no analog to that in most email products today, right? And that is actually how stacks were born. And the reason I'm telling you all this is because those stories are extremely important for creating zealots. They serve a very high purpose, a much higher purpose for us than just getting to the right design solution, because eventually, like us, you're probably going to get hit with some serious organizational headwinds. When you take a product like Alto and show it to most people at AOL, they run the other way. It's scary. You're messing with the bread and butter of the business. That's something you don't do, but we were doing it anyway. And I'm going to tell you a quick story about our executive vice president. So we had Phoenix, which is the one on the upper left, and we had gone through all of this stuff that I just talked to you about. And we said, we were in the room going through the research and saying, like, no one wants this product, Phoenix. What are we going to do? Okay, so my team got in a room, and we went through all the inspiration stuff that I showed you, and we came out with this. And we were like, oh my God, what have we done? We just gave birth to this thing, and I don't even know what it's going to do. We're going to send it to him. So we emailed it to him over Easter break. And I get an email back within 30 seconds, like, and lots of expletives, and like, what are you thinking? We're just going to throw all that work away? What is this? Oh my gosh, get out, that kind of stuff. And the reason that's important is because when this is the best part is this. When we all went back to work after the break, and we literally had an intervention with him. We pulled him into a room. We waited for him to come out of his office and pulled him into a room. And all 8 of us, not just the designers, but the developers, the product people, the QA folks, everybody, 8 people, waylaid him and said, we don't want to build that product. That's not the right thing to do. It's what our organization, like 1,000 compromises, created, but that's not the right thing. That's the right thing. So what did he say? He said, I love that product, but we're going to keep building that one. So that's real, man. That's reality, right? It isn't always a happy ending. There were lots of times where the developers would get in fights about, like, well, who asked for this? Did product ask for this? Why can't they be fine with this normal search box? Why does it have to do all of this? Like literal arguments, fights. People could almost be fired over doing that, and we still did it, right? Or how about when the CEO says, that's great and all, I want to live that dream too, but what are you doing about the current AOL Mail product? I don't even know where to start to answer that question. That's what we should be doing. So these are all stories that, all that stuff that we went through together was so important for us to help us stay on track, to help us say no, to help us persevere in this. Another thing that zealots need is an ideology. Because actually the most powerful design tool that you have isn't Photoshop, it's not Illustrator, it's not whatever you use, it's words. Those are really important things. And why? Because people from all over the organization, well-meaning, some not well-meaning, they're going to try to attach like a plethora of must-have features to your ideas. They're going to try to turn it into a Homer car. They're going to try to shoot it in the head. This has happened to Alto. Alto's constantly on the chopping block. They're going to try to blunt the sharp edges of your product so that, quote-unquote, normal people get it. Well, the normal people actually want the crazy thing, actually, turns out. And so it was really important for us to collect our design principles as we went. So I'm not going to lie, we didn't start with like some super insightful principles. These came, they were vague and they were fuzzy, and we made these as we went. And we were building the plane as it was flying in the air. And it's extremely easy to lose your way, and that's why these things are important. Should we add this feature? Should we spend 2 weeks on that little animation of the stack thing coming over? We needed compasses and North Stars. And so one of the first key things about Alto was it had to pass the 15-foot test. When you were watching somebody at a cafe using this product, you had to go like, what the hell's that thing? That's really important. That reaction, that visceral emotional reaction, super key, super critical. And you're not going to get that by looking like the competition. That immediately sets you apart, right? We're immediately at odds. Another thing that Alto tries to do is it tries to open up spaces. It tries to calm the aspects of the interface down so that it lets the content sing, right? So lets the key features become self-evident. We use buttons sparingly. We use negative space generously. All the basic good design stuff, but that's a big deal for an industry that has density. It's really important that you get 30 freaking lines of emails in there, right? So that's countervailing to what most people ask for. Alto is a visual product. It is designed to reveal what's inside of your inbox. It turns it on its head. Most email products are about folders that contain messages, that contain sometimes attachments. And Alto flips that in a lot of cases, right? It turns your inbox inside out. It's not a technology about moving mail, because we rely on the servers of the other product, the service providers to do that. It's more about understanding what's in your inbox, right? And the last principle was that we needed to tell the story with motion. It was really important that Alto feel alive and organic. When you make a stack and you see those emails get sucked out, like that is a very important emotional crescendo that is super key that we get that right. They aren't the icing on those kind of transitions. That's not the icing on the cake. That is the cake. That's very key to get. So now let's talk about funding, because all Zealots need funding. And our form of funding was this. This is AOL Mail. So it turns out that we actually redesigned AOL Mail while we were doing Alto. They're separate products. They're not designed to be, they are totally meant for different audiences. Alto is a growth vehicle. AOL Mail is for people that use AOL Mail and maybe a few other people, right? But we addressed this current product to fund our revolution, because what it did was it showed near-term results, and it kept building runway for Alto. It allowed us to keep going, right? And there was a side benefit that was pretty cool. It actually diverted all attention away from Alto. So we just said, like, hey, look at this. Don't worry about that. And that's also key, because Zealots always need a hideout. It's very important. This was ours. So we actually did a lot of what we call work camps. I don't know, that doesn't sound so fun. They were actually a lot of fun. But I forget, somebody was mentioning how, like, we are a distributed team. We're on 2 coasts. It was really important that we bring people together in the same room, because that's where the zealous culture is created, right? That's where you're telling the same stories, where you're sharing ideas with each other. And these kind of products, they're not often your day job. This is like your night passion work, right? So you also have to be careful that you eliminate outside distractions, or the stuff's never going to get done. That's why we would take people for a week at a time, and we would go to places like, Asilomar and the Holiday Inn at Paso Robles and stuff like that, and just lock everyone in a room, and we'd sleep, live, drink. That's what we did. We'd stay there, and we work on it. And it was a very safe place for these controversial ideas to exist outside of the corporate culture. Alto was done with 0 exec involvement. And there's a user quote that when we first showed it to some people, they were saying, you know what, when I see this product, it actually feels like it wasn't designed in a boardroom. I love that. And that's why, because it wasn't. It was designed in places like this. Okay. So this was not obviously a cakewalk. There were some major organizational headwinds against it. It was a tricky problem to attack. I'm not saying that this product is the end-all be-all. What I'm here to talk to you about is how we did it, and how important it was for the people involved in the process. There are still multiple attempts to shelve this product, actually, believe it or not. And when we launched, it was actually, turns out, it was one of the biggest launches that AOL's had in years. The press had over 170 pieces. It was all over. There were a ton of tweets about it. And what you saw was actually people saying amazing things that I was blown away by, that things like, could AOL be back? Like, is this a turnaround? Like, that's a big deal. That's a huge deal. I mean, we got a lot of people trying to figure that out. And somehow a group of zealots tried to start something small. We started with one thing, but I think it can actually go somewhere. All right, so I'd like to end with some advice from another film visionary. This is Terry Gilliam. I don't know if you know him, but he does some awesome movies. And he was actually giving advice to Quentin Tarantino, who was making his first movie way back when, Reservoir Dogs. And what he said to him was, or Quentin asked him, like, you have this amazing vision in all of your films. Like, how do you capture it? How do you go about capturing what's in your mind and getting it on film? And Terry Gilliam said to him, you don't conjure your vision. Like, you're not in charge of that. You need to know what your vision is, and then you go hire really talented people and explain it to them. So, and if you can articulate it and they're talented, then they're going to give you your vision. And to me, like Terry Gilliam and like George Lucas, you have to create believers every day. And I think to me that's what being a zealot means. It's not just our job, it's actually probably one of the hardest things to do in design. Okay, that's it. Thank you.